Here today to share Maude's story, please welcome James Watkins. Hi, Jason. Now, obviously, so many people will recognise you from all these incredible roles that, I mentioned just then. And possibly the first time that anyone would have had any kind of inkling about what you and your family have gone through was your speech that you made when you won the award.
Yeah.
Just to go back a little bit and talk us through, what actually happened when Maude first showed signs of getting ill?
Well, it was in the lead up to Christmas in 2010, and Maude was showing signs of flu. So she had, she was losing her voice, slightly hoarse.
Normal toddler stuff.
Yeah, there she is. I mean, it's, yeah. And so it was what you would think as a parent would be flu or a heavy cold. Yeah. And I've had an instinct, and my wife Clara had an instinct that maybe it was something else was going on. So we took her to a GP. Yeah. And again, she said, "Oh, well, I think you should just, I think it's a chest infection, bacterial infection." And I was sort of, I think as a parent, and this is crucial to sepsis in a way, that if your instinct leads you in a certain way, that you should be able to follow it up. Yeah. And so I said at that time, well, I think it doesn't feel right. And she said, OK, we'll go down to the drop-in A&E. So we went to the paediatric drop-in A&E. And we were, at that time, discharged. We were given some antibiotics and something to ease the throat constriction, but then discharged because it was just like a bad infection. And then symptoms reoccurred, and we'll talk a bit about symptoms in a second. They reoccurred and they were more severe. So we went again the next day.
And this is over the period of how many hours?
This is the next day, so this is like a day later. Okay. And the symptoms were worse, and she was having breathing difficulties, and Clara and I drove her at breakneck speed down to her hospital. She was losing consciousness, and so it was incredibly distressing. We ran through A&E and were seen by the paediatric expert there, the consultant. Yeah. But again, she was given a sort of standard procedural treatment at that point. Why wouldn't you? The symptoms didn't seem to... But it was difficult for me to explain down the food chain what it was like when we were in the car. So, anyway. So we were discharged again. Her temperature was falling. She seemed better, and she was. She was given antibiotics again, and again some more stuff for her throat, and said, well, just be aware of her the next day. And this is New Year's Eve, so we took her back. We did everything that the doctors told her to do, not too hot, not too cold at night, put her down. And in the morning, our other daughter, who shared a room at the time, came in and said, oh, I can't wake Maude. So, I mean, it was, and I'll spare you all that. But, and she had died on the morning of New Year. So, it's... And I'm not shying away from it. It's almost Dickensian in a way, that you feel that within, modern medical practice, that could happen. Distressing as a parent, obviously. It's a cataclysmic effect on us, our family. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why, we fight on and try and sadly, I know we'll talk a bit more about detail, but I've read carbon copy stories in the last couple of years, in the last year.
Yeah. Was that the first you'd heard of sepsis once you... Because has this always been there and we just didn't know?
Yeah. The first time the word sepsis was mentioned was 6 months later in the inquest. So, and it was streptococcus and flu, which is what we thought it was. Streptococcus is a stomach infection. But sepsis, the first time it was mentioned, because it wasn't understood. What sepsis does is that it lurks underneath presenting symptoms. So the presenting symptoms with Maude were breathing difficulties and with a chest infection, which could have gone on to pneumonia. But what happens is the sepsis starts to overreact against the immune system, and it keeps going, and it's undetected. So medical practitioners historically, less so now because of the UK Sepsis Trust and other people working in the field, means that you can think, could it be sepsis? Particularly within vulnerable groups.
So start there.
Start there, rule that out, and then present, present the symptoms at the same time. So the numbers, over historically, there were more cases of sepsis. Now we understand it. That's why the figures...
Misdiagnosed.
Yes, yeah.
And what would bring it on? Because it's seen as the body's immune system sort of going into overdrive. But you were saying earlier when we were chatting in the break that it could be something as small as a paper cut. It could be some sort of infection. That
Yes, it's any kind of infection, and I think the UK Sepsis Trust we're trying to get the notion, and we've been lobbying through Parliament. There are new systems of care within NHS hospitals. Not all, because possibly the way the NHS is structured, it's down to individual trusts as to what kind of level of care they can institute.
But surely, with a disease, a condition as serious as this, NICE or the government should issue central guidelines that have to apply to all hospitals. It shouldn't be arbitrary whether a NHS trust adopts your guidelines.
Well, there are guidelines, and there is a database which through lobbying through Parliament is available to medical practitioners. You can access a database which put forward by NHS England, and you can have training courses. There get many tweets and correspondence with ambulance services who contact me about the initiatives they're engaged in.
But what are the symptoms? Sorry. What are the? Because I think that's what people want to know. Is like, how do I identify this?
Well, if you remember the symptoms I said with Maude, they're prevalent, but within children, there's this breathing very fast, which is like what's called a stridor, which is this intense breathing difficulties. If you have a fit or convulsion in your child, and if the skin is mottled or pale or bluish, that's another symptom. Or if there's a rash that doesn't go away when you press.
So similar to the meningitis.
It is, and that's true. And in that particular symptom, and then if your child's very lethargic and you can't wake them, and then they feel abnormally cold to touch. So they're there with children, and the under fives, it's whether they haven't passed any urine for 12 hours or they're vomiting. So those are the symptoms. There's symptoms within adults, and of course at the other end of the scale, at the elder population, the symptoms are prevalent as well. And all these things are available online as well.
And for
how
adults,
do you treat it once you've identified it?
Well, blood tests and antibiotics. You can lactate, and you can give.
So a specific type of antibiotic.
Yeah, there's a specific type of antibiotic. A blood test to see whether it's there, and you hydrate. And there are systems. There's a Sepsis 6, which is a way of a checklist of things that you need to go through, and there are apps available, the technology's there, and there have been incredible strides. But it's funny that I'm here and I'm hearing that people are, very kindly I can hear R every time we talk about it, and it proves that people still don't know my story and one Clara's, and that's not but it shows you how important it is.
Well, I'm reading stories about sepsis all the time. But
Yeah.
5 years ago, I didn't know what it was.
No. So at least it's coming into the public agenda, and there are initiatives. I think there's a big initiative by a well-known supermarket on Friday, which is World Sepsis Day.
Right.
About initiative with them. So.
But you've had a huge part to play, because even coming on a programme like this, where so many parents, and especially parents of young children, will be watching you, just by even speaking out today, you don't know the amount of good that you may have done.
Well,
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it, because we know how hard it is.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for having me on.
Obviously, the death of a child hits you very, very hard. My husband lost his son, and it was a devastating experience for him. And reading through what you said about losing Maude, I could completely identify with that, because he couldn't be in a room with a child after his own child had died. Obviously, you had another daughter. How did you manage to move on?
Well, I think we were in the park the other day, and some months ago, and I'd got to the park early, and I saw a child that looked exactly like Maude, and my wife Clara was approaching, and me and Dennis, my father-in-law, we said, "Oh, let's go and do something else." So it's incredibly painful. I think for my wife and I, it's been wonderful campaigning, and there is a satisfaction in, if that's the right word, in helping other people. Talking about the sepsis cases that I read, we've got to stop that happening. With child bereavement, it's a way of saying you're not alone. People have been through what you've been through. It's a very dark pit that you feel you can't get out of. You can't see an end to it. How can you possibly recover from something like that? But there are people who have and do, and there is support.
And Jason, we're going to put all of those details up on our site as well, so that if there's anybody watching at home that's been affected by anything that we've spoken about, please head to our website. It'll be on your screen now for helplines and more information. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on.